Our Past, Part 1, textbook in history for class 6 by NCERT. And I'm going to read out to you a few lines where this representation is not explicit, but it is running in between the lines. This is on page 54. So this is from the chapter Kingdoms, Kings and Early Republic. And this is the first time that Indian monarchy or Hindu monarchy is basically being described by NCERT history textbooks. The Ashwamedha or horse sacrifice was one such ritual. On the surface, you won't find things that are factually wrong, but there is something inserted in between the lines, and those are the things that we'll have to decode. A horse was let loose to wander freely, and it was guarded by Raja's men. If the horse wandered into the kingdoms of other Rajas and they stopped it, they had to fight. If they allowed the horse to pass, it meant that they accepted that the Raja who wanted to perform the sacrifice was stronger than them. These Rajas were then invited to the sacrifice, which was performed by specifically trained priests who were rewarded with gifts. The Raja who organized the sacrifice was recognized as being very powerful, and all those who came brought gifts to them. This is the beginning of the narrative. And what is the interpretation which is being given to us over here? The interpretation is that the Raja, the Indian monarch or the Hindu monarch, was an individual who was power hungry, who was being assisted by the Brahmins. The governance was hierarchical and oppressive, which was being conducted by the Rajas and the Brahmins. And as I discussed earlier, this was not what our Rajas were doing if you go into the Dharma Shastras. The diktat or the dictum in Arthashastra is very clear. The Raja has to be dharmic. The Raja was the representative of Dharma. And in all the coins that you have found, particularly of the Gupta period, you would find Raja and Rani sitting under a canopy, sitting under a chhatra. What did that chhatra denote? That was the chhatra of Dharma. There is a constant invocation on the part of the Raja to be dharmic, and be dharmic in as many ways as possible. But what is it that you get here? Raja is an individual who is power hungry and is assisted by Brahmins who are gift hungry. And this narrative, as I told you, hasn't really disappeared. What is important to note here is that this narrative is being read by 6th grade children whose minds are very, very delicate. This narrative is basically going into their unconscious. It is not going into their conscious mind. And because it is not going into their conscious mind, deconstructing this narrative will actually become very, very difficult later. It begins to form the part of the collective unconscious of our community, of our society. Let me proceed a little further. The Raja was a central figure in these rituals. He often had a special seat, a throne, or a tiger skin. His charioteer, who was his companion in the battlefield and witnessed his exploits, chanted the tales of his glory. Raja is basically a megalomaniac. That's who he is. Raja is not dharmic. His relatives, especially his wives and sons, had to perform a variety of minor rituals. The other Rajas were simply spectators who had to sit and watch the performance of the sacrifice. Once again, the priests, come into the picture. Priests performed the rituals, including the sprinkling of sacred water on the king, The ordinary people, the Vish or Vaishya, also brought gifts. So the oppression of the common people is inserted in here. The ordinary people, the Vish or Vaishya, also brought gifts. However, some people, such as those who were regarded as Shudras by the priests, were excluded from many rituals. This is not true. This is not true. In ancient India, all the four Varnas participated in many of the rituals that occurred, for the king or for the kingdom.